My fellow humankind, I wanted to provide you with some very important information that I hope you will all stop and listen up for. While we've been concerned with who's in the right or wrong for wearing or not wearing their mouth coverings, or whose idea it was to mute our presidential candidates' microphones, we negated to realize that we, as a society, were not given a choice as to whether we should be muting our own microphones, or whether we needed to be covering our own mouths, biting our tongues, and being mindful of what we said in our thought to be private conversations. Starting with the inception of our race war, rioting, stay-home, hate-mongering Pandemic Palooza 2020, our elected officials have been quietly convening, discussing our Fourth Amendment rights, and which parts of those rights they can add an addendum or an exception to without our noticing. We live in times where technology is moving faster than we can keep up, and we've become so accustomed to the conveniences that these technologies provide, we've stopped asking the question, at what cost? The Electronics Communication Privacy Act and the Title II provision, the Stored Communications Act, both of 1986, are antiquated and are no longer relatable to the modern era that we live in. Our state and local law enforcement are fully aware of this, and they dance the limbo dance in and out of those gray areas, asking how low can we go, hundreds and thousands of times a day. If they can't railroad the telco providers into relinquishing CP&I data, they'll get it from Google or Siri. If they can't use the already embedded malware in our apps to backdoor into our devices to read our contacts, SMS, instant messages, call logs, physical activity, real-time location data, enable our microphones or our cameras so they can see and hear every moment of what should be our private lives, they'll use other means such as Bluetooth, our near-field communication services, our screencasting, or here's one that they're really proud of that they don't want you to know about, the radio frequency that all of our electronics discharge, regardless of if our devices are on airplane mode or powered off. Think you'll circumvent their efforts by leaving your devices at home? Think again. If you have a vehicle newer than an early 2000s model, odds are pretty good you've got built-in LoJack or GPS, and a hands-free option, which is extremely easily wiretapped, built right into your steering wheel. Now, I'm sure many of you will say, well, don't do anything illegal and you've nothing to worry about. But let me ask you, what happens when those fine lines between what's legal and illegal begin to fray? When we've all looked the other way, thinking this abhorrent behavior brought to us by our friendly government becomes passively accepted as the new norm, and suddenly your wife, your sister, or your daughter are taken away in handcuffs, prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for threatening and menacing or conspiracy to commit violence, because she said she'd like to knock that smile off of that Helen bitch from the PTA meeting's face during a conversation she thought she was having in private, driving her kids home from soccer practice. Will it still be a not in my backyard kind of mentality? I don't think that it will. And by then, it'll be too late. They've already got us living in fear to leave our homes. How long will it be until we're in our attics, praying to God that our floorboards aren't squeaking and that they didn't hear? I'm so absolutely disgusted with what's considered to be the socially accepted norm of our attitudes toward drug addicts. Because the substance is illegal, anyone who has an addiction is treated with hate, disgust, distrust, and rejection. But since alcohol is legal, it's okay for Bobby John to get shithouse drunk and beat on his wife and kids? Wake up, people! These are your neighbors, your cousins, your children, your servers, your cashiers, your fellow man. 38% of adults in America are battling an illicit drug use disorder. That's almost half of us. Stop acting like you're better than half of your own country. And start thinking of how we can help our fellow man. Commonwealth. It is not our job on this earth to cast judgment. God already has a pretty good checks and balances system in place. Our job is to love one another and reach out a hand to help, to lift each other up, not tear each other down. Were you aware that your taxpayer dollars were fully funding a fleet of quad cab pickups, some with fifth wheel trailers, full-sized SUVs, and innumerous other undercover surveillance vehicles, all to chase around, stalk, and harass small-time drug users all day, every day? Think how much fuel alone that is. Were you also aware that law enforcement is purchasing a multitude of homes, manufactured homes and properties, in these neighborhoods where their suspects live, all to have a hub for their unethical and unconstitutional surveillance? Just think if our taxpayer dollars went towards buying those homes for the homeless, or towards more accessible options for treatment and mental health services for those drug addicts you despise so much. Instead, we rip good, loving parents away from their children, lock them away in the privatized jail and prison systems where they will not be rehabilitated, and traumatize these poor children for life, throwing them into the foster care system where they will be bought, sold, and traded like livestock to the highest bidder. And then, guess what? They grow up to become a new generation of drug addicts, desperately trying to self-medicate, to numb the pain of the lives they've been forced to live, given no choice because we had no compassion for our fellow man. Our own government is the new cartel, and they are the biggest human traffickers on the planet. We can blame our senators, we can blame our president, we can blame the evil that lurks within our government, but at some point, we must realize that that evil lurks within us at home, and that only that which we give power to is allowed to fester and grow and spread. I hope that you all give some consideration to the information I'm conveying here, and perhaps open up your minds and your hearts to the possibilities of what our society could look like, could be capable of, if we changed our mindset to look out for the commonwealth instead of just ourselves. Thank you for your time and attention. God bless.